Hello and welcome to another USPDA personal security training video. You're probably wondering where I've been. Well, in case you haven't noticed, it's spring outside, which means time to be out there instead of in the studio shooting videos, but I do have a job to do. So let's get started. A lot of people are turning to guns nowadays for their personal security, and I don't blame you. There's a lot of things going on and a lot of reasons to be carrying a firearm these days. But there's a few things that you need to be very well aware of before you decide to arm yourself with a firearm for personal security. And the first thing that every class I've ever taken, every class I've ever taught, one of the first things we do is we teach the universal rules for gun safety. Now, the NRA came up with the 4 universal rules of gun safety many decades ago. But since then, things have changed, and there's been a 5th one added. Now, the reason that one's been added is because of negligence or irresponsibility. So we're going to cover that one in a few minutes, but I just want to make you aware that you're wondering, oh gee, why is he talking about 5 universal rules? There's only 4. No, there are 5 now, and that's why, irresponsibility. So we're going to talk about that, and if you follow these rules, gun safety is just a byproduct of it. If you don't follow these rules, tragedy is a byproduct. So let's get right to it and start with the first 4 of the universal rules of gun safety. Rule number 1, treat every gun as if it's always loaded. Every gun, every time. I don't care if you're handling a revolver and the cylinder's open, you treat this firearm as if it's loaded. You don't close the cylinder, gee, it's not loaded, I'm going to close the cylinder and point it right at this person over here. No, you don't do that. You treat this firearm always as if it's loaded. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2, never point your firearm at anything or anyone you don't intend to kill or destroy. And that means allowing your muzzle to cross anything that you're not willing to kill or destroy. Never allow this end of the gun to point at anything you're not willing to kill. Rule number 3, keep your finger off the trigger and outside the trigger guard until you're on target and have made the decision to shoot. There's some gray areas in that rule right there, because in a lot of states like Tennessee, where we're located, if you even pull your gun when you don't have a reasonable belief that there's an imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury, that's aggravated assault. You're probably going to go to jail. But if you're confronted with a violent situation and you are forced to pull your firearm, you've probably already made the decision to shoot. So there's a little bit of a gray area there. A lot of people will argue that point with me, but I'm coming from a guy that was a cop, and I've been carrying firearms for 40-some years. If I pull my firearm, I've already made the decision that if this person goes one step further, I'm going to shoot. So chances are my finger's going to be pretty damn close to the trigger, not resting on the side of the gun outside the trigger guard. But that's up to you. That's based on my own personal experience and training with firearms. So in a hostile situation, that keeping your finger outside the trigger guard, you might need to waive that one, is what I'm saying. You need to be prepared to shoot in a split second, because violent confrontations like that are over in a matter of about a second and a half. You don't want to be taking the time to find your finger's way inside the trigger guard to the trigger. You maybe want to pre-set yourself up for that, is what I'm getting at. But anyway, as a general rule, keep your finger off the trigger and outside the trigger guard until you're on target and have made the decision to pull the trigger to shoot. Rule number 4, always be sure of your target and what's beyond. Now, the reason for that rule is because people who end up in violent situations like that and do produce a firearm and do pull the trigger and fire a shot frequently miss. So if your bullet misses, or you're firing a .357 Magnum that might over-penetrate your target in other words, go all the way through the person that you're trying to shoot, whatever's behind them is probably also going to be struck with that bullet, whether it's a miss or an overpenetration. So you need to know what is behind your target or beyond your target before you decide to pull the trigger. Now, there's another thing that may get into a little bit of gray area. It's a tough call. But if you can see what's beyond your target, maybe sidestep and fire the shot from a different angle, drop down low and shoot up. Find a way not to miss your target and hit some innocent person behind him, or over-penetrate your target and hit an innocent person behind him. Property damage is one thing. If that bullet goes through him and hits a parked car somewhere, I'll pay for that damage. If it's a person, I've got to live with that the rest of my life, and I'm legally responsible for that person's injuries or death. So it is an important rule. It's one that needs to be applied. So many of these rules need to be applied in an instant. You have to make a decision. So anyway, general rule number 4, always be sure of your target and what's beyond. Now, getting on to this new rule, rule number 5, as I said, was added just within the last decade or so because of gun owners who are either negligent or irresponsible. If you're going to own a gun, you need to have responsibility. You need to take responsibility because the law is going to hold you responsible or accountable, whatever word you like to use. I like responsibility. That implies it's something that I take on myself rather than having someone else hold me accountable. I want to take that responsibility on myself. So rule 5 is always secure your firearm away from unauthorized persons. Make sure that no one that's not authorized to touch that gun can touch that gun. Now, the question I get asked a lot is, well, who's unauthorized? Everybody except you. You're the only person that's authorized to touch that gun unless you give someone else authorization to touch the gun. We don't want accidents. We see these tragedies all the time where a child gets a hold of a gun, shoots himself, shoots one of his little playmates. We need to be more responsible in handling our firearms, and that means securing your firearm away from people who are not authorized to have it. Those are the 5 rules of firearm safety. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.